You're listening to Boobies and Noobies, brought to you by the Frolic Podcast Network. Welcome to Boobies and Noobies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and it is time for another episode of Wedding Season. All month long, we are discussing wedded bliss, from the cakes to the clothes, and of course, the kiss. Catch a new episode every Friday in the month of June on your favorite podcast platform, or you can listen to new episodes and past episodes on boobiesandnoobies.com. Now, today's guest is one of my dearest friends. She's a self-proclaimed romance skeptic and a puppy parent to Spencer Reed, the toy multi-poo. Please join me in welcoming Marchae.
Hi, Kelly.
Hello, my dear. It's so good to see you. Marchae is actually one of the few people that I've had the chance to see during the pandemic,
that is so
which
true.
has been a delight.
So true.
Yeah, and that wouldn't have even been possible had I not, hauled ass to Minnesota in the middle of a global pandemic. And here I am gearing up to move again. This time I'm heading west to Portland and doing my best to convince Marchae to pack her bags as well and come along.
You never know. I told you, my partner is definitely a nomad, so anything is possible.
Yeah, even Portland? Could Portland be possible? I think even
Portland, we have actually looked at Portland. I am obsessed with every housing finder, apartment finder app, so
yes.
No United States is off the radar.
I love that. I have to tell you too, like every time I move somewhere, my dad, who is like really inept in general when it comes to technology, the one thing he's great at is looking up places to eat. And
that is so funny.
I mean, it's something that runs in the family. Like clearly people who listen to this podcast know how much I love food, but he will send me lists, like those lists that you'll find on Yahoo or something that are like 31 of the best places to eat a piece of chocolate cake in America, or the best hamburger in every state. And he'll call me out of the blue and be like, "Hey, you buy your computer?" I'm like, I guess. Like, do I need to be? I want you to look something up. And he'll just give me the name of a place and I'll look it up and it'll be like some random ass diner in Portland. I'm like, okay, so I haven't even moved there yet. I must have like 10 places saved to my Google Maps.
You won't go hungry.
No, that will never be an issue.
You'll never be hungry as long as he's around and has anything to do with it.
It's true. It's true. And I chose a place that's like right in the center of a lot of stuff. Like it's very urban. I always map how many coffee shops and how close they are to where I'm living. So, because hopefully, I don't know about you, but Marchae and I met in grad school and we both went to school for writing. And I'm a coffee shop writer. I love to write in coffee shops. Like I am missing that so much. What about you?
Absolutely. And there's a coffee shops probably in every direction within a couple of blocks. And it sucks. Like I feel a little bit more energized when I sit in the coffee shop and write. And if I'm at home toiling and pretending I'm going to write at the computer, I'll even put on like coffee shop ambiance noise and it's still not.
You do that too?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I've talked about this on the podcast, how there's like tracks on YouTube that are like, it's like audio porn, but for coffee shops. You'll hear like the espresso machine, like, and I eat it up.
Love it. So the little shop up the street from my house now has indoor seating. We've opened up indoor seating in Chicago, and I'm still a little hesitant to go, but I think now that space is officially opened and I am back in the habit of starting to write, I'm probably gonna mask up and go just for the environment. And I know a lot of people in our neighborhood, so just even to be able to have that, like to pop up and wave at somebody and get back to it, I think it makes a huge difference in my creative process. So I totally get it. When we were looking around for places, it was, is there coffee shops near? What's the art scene like?
Yep.
And like, is there a vet? Because clearly I have a menagerie. So, in addition to Spencer,
Spencer Reed, a
Spencer
good
Reed,
name. Good
yes,
name. Oh, shout out to all the Criminal Minds fans out there. And if you're not, what are you doing?
right?
I love it. Well, okay, you call yourself a romance skeptic.
I do.
And so I'd love to know a little bit about your previous experience, if any, with reading romance before today and just sort of like where that label came from.
Okay, so I don't know if you know this about me. I used to be the world's biggest Jackie Collins fan in middle school.
I
Like,
feel like we've talked about this
yeah,
somewhat.
the only writer who existed in my life at that time when I was like, I'm gonna write novels. She was the gold standard, which take that however you must. And I am not sure why in middle school that's what I was allowed to get my hands on. But I think a lot of it was in secret. Like my grandma had a big bookcase and I was just allowed to treat it like a library and you just kind of take away things and nobody's checking
It's because
because
you're still reading too.
yeah,
Like
the
I think
baby's
there's like
reading.
I think there's just like this idea of like, well, at least they're
They're
reading sort of
reading.
thing. And that's how I look at it is I'm like, if you're interested in reading something, read
Go
it.
for it,
Gosh
right?
darn it.
But I definitely needed, I think of some other titles, but I definitely needed that. I'm sorry, we're reading this. No, like somebody to scream Mayday. So I was into Jackie Collins forever and kind of took a hiatus. I thought I got a little too like, I'm over this and started reading James Patterson. So like it's not
That's
like
a shift.
it's not like I'm not talking like highbrow lit yet. And then went to college and nearly minored in language arts. I was, I think, one class short of having a language minor.
Oh, I
And
love it. I have a minor like that too. I just tell people I have a minor because I literally took all the courses in this minor. It was called communication design and it was basically
oh,
like the radio
oh,
advertising,
gotcha,
like
yeah.
anything close to filmmaking that my college offered. But yeah, I took all the classes except one because that one class was only offered at 8 a.m. once a year. And
Nope.
I was like, it's too late. It's too late and I'm too lazy. So
Yeah, see, at least that's the instructor who taught the class I needed to take at that time was just not a good human and I was not doing it. I'd
that's a
already
better
taken
reason than
yeah,
mine.
I had already taken a course with her. I could not do that to my young self again.
Yeah.
But during that time I had a really phenomenal language literature instructors who were just like, all right, we're going to read all these things. And when you put, I guess, kind of like more sophisticated literature next to Jackie Collins, things start,
Mm,
it looks, obviously, it looks different. It feels different. I think those books have their place and they certainly were fun and interesting to read at that time. But I think I just got away from it and thought it was childish because I had read those books in my childhood. And
yeah.
now I'm in college. Like, I'm not, like, this is child's play. So
Well,
I
and
just got out of it.
it doesn't help that like at least judging by the literature classes that I've taken and knowing my friends who have been English majors, literature majors, it doesn't help that most of the books that you're reading are one not authored by female authors,
Yep.
two are not romance. I mean,
Not at
that
all.
not at all, not anywhere close to romance. And three, mostly being written, we're talking close to 100, if not more, years ago.
Yeah, and I think I got a little bit lucky because the minor I actually did have intersected with some of those classes. So I had
Nice.
some more progressive instructors who really did try to kind of bring in more pop culture writing into those what could have been very like dry, boring classes. But
Hmm.
like I am very blessed to have been afforded all the education I have, of course. But I think some of what happens is you just get too smart for your own good, and you start to assign these same labels that
Yeah.
are placed on things. And so I just got away from it, and I didn't. Why would I read Jackie Collins when I can read whatever else that is in the literature section of the bookstore, because I studied literature. Well, and of course it again, it looks and feels different when the pacing of it is different, the structure is different than things that are like written with more like the more of the elements of, I guess, like character development is a lot deeper, plot development is a lot deeper, the structure of the story is a lot deeper, and the content is more grounded in like, not the world is full of Hollywood wives, husbands, children. Like, you're in a more grounded and rooted in your own reality world. So I think I just kind of got away from it, and it was like, this is silly. This never happens. And I'm not going to be reading that. And so you just kind of are like, meh, this is slow and lame, like a beach read. No, like, I'm going to read
that term. I cannot with that, which, by the way, I've talked about before, in that I'm just like, I don't usually bring books to the beach. Like, first of all, I hardly ever go to the beach, but secondly, like, if I go to the beach, like, it's to see friends or like sit, by the water and just like get a tan or like go into the water. I'm like, I feel like people bring books to the beach and never open them.
Yeah, I pretend I'm going to do it, and I'm pretty close to the lake, so like, it's a stone's throw away, and the book sits next to me, and I'm like people watching, or just kind of taking in the fresh air. So I'm not actually reading at the beach, but yeah, those books aren't, they just stopped being part of what I was reading, and as a writer, it wasn't even what I was interested. And my writing style, it's not even what I write. And I think a lot of that is informed by what I like came of age reading, which was not romance novels.
Marchae has a knack for writing very tragic family events in her scripts. And so, I mean, I would love, I am curious to see like what it would be like if you did write a romance or like a romantic comedy.
First of all, I'm not funny, so like I couldn't like, but
you're
even
hilarious
in life, not on the page, and I don't even think I'm that funny. But I think I could probably. I've been thinking about a romance, and then I was like, yeah, she'll be an amputee. It's gonna be real tragic, and so like, it's so dark.
But you know what? You know what? We need that. We need stories about amputees. We need stories like the one we're talking about today, where we have a heroine with sickle cell anemia, and we have a hero who tragically lost his wife in a shooting at their local church, which was very reminiscent of actual events, where the story takes place. And so, I mean, we need stories like that. Write your damn romance about the amputee. Like, I want to read that.
I will do it. I will do it. Yeah, it's what I'm about to start working on next. So
well, shit. I
actually thought of you. I was like, Kelly would be able to help with this, because
Kelly will absolutely want to help with this.
It's gonna go off the rails. Everybody will die.
No.
So yeah, it's really hard, because that's not what I guess, like, for lack of a better word, was. It was fun, and I think I just got too smart. And then it's not realistic. Like, this does not happen in real life. So there's the other part that I struggle with.
It so does happen. I mean, that's the thing too, is like, it depends, I think, how you approach romance. Like, if you're going into this thinking like, this is actual reality, like, no, this is fiction. However, I think I don't want to say every romance, but I think because love is such a universal theme that like transcends just being like an American idea, like this is like a global theme, that I think because that's at the forefront of romance, there is always an element of reality. I mean, even if you're talking about an alien romance set in a different planet, or like, I feel like lately there's been a lot of monsters and like demons and Satan romance stories that I'm like, okay, but they're still falling in love. Like, she, obviously somebody's finding something redeeming in Satan to want to be with them. So there you go. That's what we're all looking for.
is love. So I guess when you do approach it, I think the other thing is that when I would read romance novels, like at that time you had like we're talking decades ago at this point, Terry McMillan, who was kind of the face of pop culture romance at the time for African American women. I'm trying to think who else. Zane might have been around. Eric Jerome Dickey, who just recently passed away. And those were kind of the more popular names, and that's not a huge platter to choose from. And so
right.
it also fell for, like, I don't know, it was very white, for lack of a better.
It was very white. No, just say it. Like, it was very white.
Very white, and like very like upper middle class, and this thing that was for rich white people. And so it just didn't, at that time, when I was like also like toying with what it meant to be a Black woman in American society, did not jive with, like, it didn't feel like I fit into that space necessarily. Like,
right.
And of course you grow up and it's your imagination, and you can, make these people whatever you want them to be. It's words on a page. But I think it's a little more complex than that. And so it's like, this is not my reality, and I cannot continue to read this. Like, and I don't think at that time, like, I had all the language to assign to that. Like, in retrospect, that's very much what it was. It's like, this is not even for me. Like, I'm not going to keep reading this. Like, I will never be a Hollywood wife, no matter how much I deserve to fit in that world with Jackie Collins. It's not going to happen. And so it became just a frustration to find good romance featuring Black characters that didn't fall into like a particular trope necessarily.
Yeah.
And I think I just abandoned it. So I moved to, like, and we talked about this, just like either nonfiction work or heavy family trauma literature that was like rooted in reality. So not very happy. And I even said to you the whole time I was reading this, I was like, when's she gonna die? Like, I'm waiting. Because
you're just so used to it.
Yes, like reminding myself that's not generally applied to the romance genre.
No, it is not. That's kind of one of the beautiful things about romance, is that, this understanding that, it's gonna end okay. Like, it's gonna end with either your traditional happily ever after, or if nothing else, a happy for now sort of situation. Right. And that's the contract you sign as both a reader and writer of romance. And if you break that contract, we're going to have words.
We will have big problems. So the whole time I had to keep reminding myself, like, she's going to be fine. Everyone here is going to be fine, even though I'm like waiting to toe off the edge of the cliff and make it not fine.
I love it. Well, and you were super excited too when I mentioned, I guess this would be the time to introduce the fact that today we are going to be talking about A Lowcountry Bride by Preslaysa Williams. This is a brand new contemporary romance release. It was published just this month, June 2021. It's available on Amazon for $10.99 Kindle edition. However, Marchae and I were lucky enough to receive an advanced copy from the publishers. And this is also the first book in Preslaysa's Brides of Lowcountry series, although I really don't know what to expect from the rest of the series. Marchae and I talked about this a little bit off air, but we did say, like, usually in like a romance series, you introduce a lot of characters to like indicate who would be coming up in future books. Like, oh, this is somebody's assistant and they're going to be the heroine in the next book, or it's somebody's brother and he's going to be the hero in the next book. But I don't know if we got that in this one. So I'm very curious to see what happens next with this series, because honestly, I have no clue. Like, maybe it'll just be a fresh batch of people, and maybe they're somehow linked back to this bridal store because it is called The Brides of Lowcountry. But yeah, I don't know. We will see. But one of the reasons I was drawn to this book, one, was that, I had never read a book by Preslaysa Williams. I'm always looking for new to me authors. And by the way, I forget if you and I talked about this, Marchae, or if somebody else brought this to my attention, but I had no idea that Preslaysa is also an actress, and she goes back to like the 90s Nickelodeon TV shows, like as a kid.
What?
Yeah, my knowledge of her is as one of the characters on that mystery show that was like the Mysteries of Shelby Woo, or like the
What?
Adventures of Shelby Woo. It was a Nickelodeon show that was like
No.
some junior Nancy Drew stuff. And the minute I read that she was in it, I was like, I know exactly who you were. I remember this show.
Stop. No, I had no idea.
So I had no idea either when I first picked up the book, but she was a new to me author, and that's why I was super excited. Secondly, I love the representation in this. You know, we have a um what does she coin the term? Afro Filipina.
Filipina.
Yeah, Afro Filipina. She also uses the term Blasian a
Yes.
lot, both Black and Asian. We have a single father raising his daughter. And I mean, it's a really interesting mix of characters and also like relationships. Like a lot of people in the story have suffered some kind of loss. You know,
Yeah.
Derek, our hero, has lost his wife tragically in a shooting at their church, which wasn't that something that happened in South Carolina?
I feel like her forward or her dedication to the book um is makes it seem like it was near where this happened. So my guess is that yes.
I remember there being I want to say it was in Charleston, and maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I want to
Yeah.
say this was like a few years ago, and it was like a young white
White male.
supremacist shooter
He went into the church.
and it was like purposefully like a church that was predominantly like frequented by Black people in South
Yes.
Carolina. And I just, oh my gosh. So I mean, the fact that that's not like a major part of the story, but it is there.
It's
I
an
mean,
undertone. It's mentioned frequently throughout the book, particularly the impact it not only had on Derek, but also on his daughter.
And like their faith as well. Because
Yeah.
I mean, the daughter has kind of like flocked to the church, like she stayed strong with the church and like found connection there. Whereas Derek, who was a soldier overseas at the time of his wife's death, has kind of like tried to stay away from the church. Like it's been a hard point getting there. And I feel like I'm, putting the cart before the horse at this point, because like I want to give everyone the synopsis, but I did just want to kind of like set up the fact that I was really excited to read this, both for like the diversity and also, just the inclusion, because our heroine again has sickle cell anemia. And it's one of those stories where, I've read this in a few romances. You know that like this heroine is going to probably have a shorter lifespan. Like, I mean, there is this like imminent threat of death. And I think that's as close as you get to something like tragic in a romance novel, is just sort of knowing like no matter how much these people fall in love or how amazing their romance is, like it's going to be cut short. Like, so that I could see where that would I could see where there would be a lot of trigger warnings in this book for for readers, just knowing some of those things at the forefront of like what you're getting into. Now, again, we're not seeing any death. There's no deaths occurring like in the book. It's all happened before the story begins. But again, just forewarning before you head into your reading.
Agreed.
So let me go ahead and give everybody the synopsis here for A Lowcountry Bride, and then we will dive into our discussion. So here we go. Maya Jackson has worked for Laura Whitcomb, Inc., a renowned New York City bridal gown brand, for years and dreams of becoming head designer. Problem number one, Laura Whitcomb sucks. It's not in the synopsis. That's in my voice. She sucks.
She was the worst.
She was the worst.
The worst. I was like, what?
So bad. Oh, God. She has the talent. Again, we're talking about Maya Jackson, not Laura Whitcomb. She has the talent. She just needs a chance to showcase her unique style. due to an illness, she's always prioritized her career over her personal life until her father fractures his hip and Maya returns to Charleston, South Carolina.
While home for only a few months, she's thrilled to find an opportunity at the local bridal gown boutique, never expecting sparks to fly with its owner. A military veteran and widowed father, Derek Sullivan, hopes to save Always a Bride from bankruptcy in order to preserve the legacy of his mother. He also wants to reconnect with his estranged 12-year-old daughter who is still recovering from the loss of her mother. The last thing he needs is a relationship with a beautiful, smart, complicated woman who will be leaving soon. When Derek begins to fall for the lovely Maya, he knows there's no future, but destiny has its own plans, and these two lonely people with big hearts discover that coming home to love is the best gift life can give.
Okay, Marchae. Well, at this point, I'd love to ask you for just sort of your overall impressions and thoughts. So, what do we think?
I actually really liked this book.
Hooray!
I know. I think I went in not knowing what to expect. I was prepared to trudge through and cry a little. With the expectation that this was not going to be good at all. And
crying because it's bad, not crying because of her having sickle cell anemia or something.
Exactly. But these characters are incredibly well written. You actually fall in love with them and you care what happens. So by the end, yes, I was still like, oh, if she dies, I'm going to be so mad. With that constant reminder that she can't. It's a romance novel. But that's how invested I was, that I was actually trying to predict. Like, I wasn't reading it on autopilot because I'm recording this with you, but like actually invested in what happened to her, what happened with her dresses. The whole time I found myself wanting illustrations of these dresses. I was like, what does
my God, right?
Yes. I was like, I want to see what these dresses look like. And I think I wanted to get lost in that fashion world more. So I really liked the book. And I was again incredibly shocked that I walked away wanting to know what else happened with their lives and her relationship with his daughter. So now her stepdaughter, I wanted more. And to me, that's how I know a book is good, is when I'm like, all right, I want to be in their world for a little bit longer. So if I had to grade it, I would give it an A.
Okay. Well, we're not at the grades portion of this podcast.
Oh, my bad. I am sorry.
And we grade on a scale of 1 to 10 here. Obviously, you have not done your research, but
right.
No, I'm with you. And honestly, we our previous read for wedding season was all about the cakes. It was about somebody baking for weddings and events, and this time it's all about the dresses. And I am somebody who absolutely loves to watch things like Say Yes to the Dress or I Found the Gown. And so this was like, it's a whole different kind of porn with this one, because you want to live vicariously through the makeover fashion montage scenes that I'm just envisioning, especially because her designs sound so unique, which is
right.
I mean, she's talking about different stitching techniques that she's learned and referencing specific patterns and colors that are both a symbol of her heritage and also, things that her mom taught her when she was little. And I'm like, man, I love the descriptions, but I'm with you. I wish I could see these. I want, and it's not that I expect, somebody to include drawings or artwork in their romance novels, but
I do.
I do think it's something that, I would love to see actualized, whether it's, as part of the book promotion or what. I really do just want to envision what these things are. I mean, I will look them up too, but oh God, they just sounded so beautiful. And I love color in wedding dresses. I love dresses that aren't just white.
Yeah.
So she was talking about deep purples and oranges and reds. And I was just here for all of it.
I wanted like, I wanted to see it. I wanted to be in that dress shop
Mhm.
so badly. And just even I said the scenes, even the sections of the text where
Yes.
she talked about redoing the space, whether it was for like the trunk show or just like
Mhm.
bringing this wedding space up to date. Like, whether I like touching things. I like
Yes.
to smell the dye that's been in fabrics. Like, I want it to be in the space. And I think that was one of the best parts of the book. And the whole time I'm like, did they include like sketches? Like, is there
Mhm.
anything where we can see? Like, she was using Kyrie shells, and you just wanted
Yeah.
to know what the dress, the dress she designed for like the governor's daughter, I think it was
Yeah.
specifically, like, that was kind of the
big
big
one.
dress, and I wanted to see it so badly.
Can we talk about all the like evil white people in this book? Because Laura Whitcomb, and then also that bitch who tries to buy the
By the
wedding dress
shop?
shop that's like, I'm going to get rid of everything and turn it into a bookstore. And I'm like, look, I love a good
No.
bookstore. We both love a good bookstore, but she's like, he's got this beautiful plaque on the wall that's like about his
His
mom's
mom.
history and like her being like a Black businesswoman in like the 70s and 80s and how rare that was for like this part of Charleston. And they're located right next to this Black History Museum.
Yes.
And I mean, it sounds, I've never been to Charleston and I've always wanted to go. And this just gave me more things to think about, especially because Preslaysa does mention in either her dedication or her acknowledgments that like this is based off of like an actual area of Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, oh my God, like this bitch wants to come up in here and just like take
And
everything down and like
ruin it.
make it a, bookstore that I'm just like, come on, this is
It was
history.
so bad. It was this constant like devaluation of everything these people worked for, whether it
Yeah.
was Derek or whether it was Maya. And you saw it at both ends. So Maya's boss actually making her do work and not paying her. That was number one.
She is terrible.
And I was like,
she is worse than like Miranda Priestley, Devil Wears Prada,
yes.
because like Miranda at least is just like blatantly mean. This girl though is like she's like the modern day millennial Miranda Priestley, where
Oh,
it's like, I'm going to smile at you and tell you that I like all these things about you, but then like
and then
shit on your designs
ruin
because
you.
they're too ethnic or they're not what was God, she was always, it was always digs at Maya for like, not creating traditional
Additional,
wedding
yeah.
gowns.
Everything is everybody wants. No one wants this. We all want to be traditional. I think what stunned me to that point about Laura Whitcomb is that Maya had to think about leaving. So, like, that was the
I
one point in the book
know.
where I'm like, why, Maya? Why? Like, she has
It's
not done
true.
anything for you. Like, get out. You have this wonderful opportunity to be in this shop.
Yeah.
Like, leave. And
I
this woman
know.
does not care about you. So, yeah,
That
Laura
drove me
Whitcomb.
nuts too. That was like the one thing, because but I think Preslaysa does a good job of like, I don't agree with it, but I think she sets it up where it's like the reason that Maya's so invested in working for this woman is like it's something that her and her mom talked about, where her
Right.
mom's like, oh my gosh, it would be like my dream for you to like create wedding dresses for a woman like this. Like this is
Yeah.
like, she's like the top of the top. It'd be like working for Vera Wang. And like go, that'd be amazing. And so now that she's like fulfilled this,
Wish.
prophecy,
Yeah.
destiny, wish of her mother's, it's like, oh, I've done it. Like this is, and then the other thing I do appreciate is like this idea of like wanting to leave your mark, like wanting to be remembered after you're gone. Like for Derek's mother, it's the bridal shop. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
his name's Derek, right?
I really think it is
I
Derek.
keep in my head fluctuating between Derek and Devin, but I'm pretty sure it's
Yeah,
Derek.
I'm trying to Derek T. Sullivan is his
T.
name.
Sullivan.
Yes, Derek Sullivan.
But yeah, for his mom, it's the bridal shop, and that
Right.
becomes like such a bone of contention between him and his daughter. Like the daughter's like, this is the last thing that I have to hang on to
Mm-hmm.
of, grandma and like my
And
mom.
mom.
And for Maya, it's this dream that her mom had, and like she wants to fulfill that dream that her mom had for her. And so it's interesting. Like it's not something. I feel like a lot of times in romances, when there's like some sort of storyline with the family, it's about like defying their expectations.
Right.
Like, oh, we expect you to be the perfect daughter and do this for us and run the family business. And then by the end of it, they realize their actual dreams and go against that. And this one wasn't quite that. It was a little bit different, where, you know, Maya, she does get the dream job and then kind of realizes like, well, this isn't
what she'd
you know, this isn't
expected.
what I expected. Like, this is still a great opportunity, but it's not the perfect opportunity for me and like what I want to do. But I do want to leave my mark before I die. Like, I'm not going to be here as long as everybody else is, because I have sickle cell anemia. But
Right. It very
yeah,
much, there were a lot of themes, like you said, about legacy. And we saw it echoed with the woman who helps Derek with the shop.
Ginger.
Ginger, yes, Miss Ginger. We
And
saw
she's
it with
also dating Maya's
Maya's
dad, even though they
dad.
don't say that. They're just like
You know they are dating.
friends.
Yeah, they were more than friends. That'll be the second book.
I would love that, honestly.
That would be so great. I'm here for it. You see it with the daughter being able to hopefully, and Derek even says it, one day inherit that business.
Yeah.
And just like that generational layer that travels through it, even with the dresses. Like it's a theme that kind of travels through the fiber of the entire book. And, you know, the dresses specifically, again, because they seem really beautiful, and we don't like, it's the one aspect of the book that like your brain cannot wrap around unless you have like this fashion background. But
Right.
there were pieces of her mom and her grandma, and like the idea of legacy and carrying things through generationally, that I thought was kind of beautifully woven throughout. And you did kind of have this multi-generational lens to go through with Ginger and Maya's dad. And though they weren't in the book very frequently, her family she left everything behind, struggling to pay her rent in New York, to come and take care of him. It happened upon the bridal shop. So I think that it really speaks to the importance of family. And like we talked about a little bit before, just the idea of love outside of the romantic concept. Whether it was love for Derek's daughter, which is just really sweet, and she really cared for that girl, her love for her father, her love for her mom, her love for Derek, and the love of the store and the importance that store played in this historical portion of Charleston. So it's like the whole book was a giant love fest.
Yeah. I also really appreciate like the love for people, like love lost. Like we have, you know, both with Maya's mom as well as with Derek's, you know, mom and wife. Like everyone's really respectful of lost loves. Like Ginger and Maya's dad are together, but he still wears his wedding ring. And she even asks him about it. Like, is there a reason you still do this? Like, you know, does Ginger have a problem with this? And he's like, no, it's not like just because I'm with somebody new and I found a new love that like that last love becomes less important. Yeah. Like she'll always, you know, your mother will always be a part of my life. Like, and Ginger respects that. And it's the same with Derek and Maya in that, you know, his daughter in the very beginning, that daughter, man, kids, I can't.
I know.
And but the daughter's like, you must swear to me, father, that you will never date
anyone
this
else.
woman. She's an interloper. Like you can't date anyone. And then like halfway through, she's like, oh, she's fine. Like it's all good. And but you know, Maya's very respectful of both, you know, Derek's feelings as well as the daughter's feelings, that no, I'm not trying to replace your mom. I'm not trying to replace your wife. Like this is, you know, in fact, she's the one that's the most hesitant because the last thing she wants is for them to experience loss again. Like inevitable loss, that it's coming. Like there's an end date. Like this will end at some point in the near future.
Right. And I think that the idea, like, I think it's one of those things that again, we've talked about my scope of reading romance novels, but I will say, like, you're reading books sometimes where it's like there's a murder and the mistress is
Yeah.
killed, blah blah. Like, this is about, in some ways, true bereavement and that grief process that
Yeah.
Derek, for the tragic loss of his wife, this was not by any means, a thing that happened naturally, like the
Right.
tragic loss of his wife. And to even see that through the daughter's lens of what the loss of a mom looks like as a result, and at the hands of, for a lack of a better word, a terrorist who came into a church and took all these people away. And so it is like, that is, I think, unique about this, is that it approached and covered so much in just like
Yeah.
so short of a
It's
space.
not a long book, and, like, a lot of the things we're mentioning about, like, the previous deaths and the shooting and the loss of the mom, all of this occurs before the book even
Even
starts.
starts.
So, I mean, the book itself, like, if you're worried, like, this is just gonna be a sob fest through and through because people are being lost left and right, no, it's very much a story of, rediscovering your roots and, like, like Marchae said, like, this idea of legacy and family, while hanging out in a bridal shop and,
Mhm.
experiencing the designs and, the cookouts at the church. And
Loved
it's
it.
it's so sweet, like, but not in
Mhm.
like a grossly sickly sweet way. Like, I think one of the comparisons that Amy made in our last episode was that the book read like a cupcake, where it was very, very sweet. And, like, to the point where, you get a little sick at some point, from the sweetness. And that's not this story. Like, I think with the sweet, it's very balanced with, real
Mhm.
shit.
And I
And
think that is exactly what I appreciated about it, is that
yeah,
it felt more real.
yeah.
Like, you felt like even just with the guy and his mortgage to even keep the shop afloat, like,
Oh, I know.
you felt this, these are things that people deal with every day.
Yeah.
Like, it felt organic. And I don't feel like I've been able to say that about many, and maybe I'm reading the wrong books, but I don't feel like I'm able to say that about a lot of romance novels, but it felt organic. Like, I would be friends with Maya. Like, I could see
Yeah,
myself in this
I would
world,
too.
hanging out with her, stopping by the shop to see how she's doing, checking in on the little girl, asking her like, I really felt like I would go and have lemonade with her. Like, I don't even like lemonade,
Yes,
but that's my
I
friend, and so I'm
do.
gonna have it. Like, so
Have some
I
sweet tea.
sweet tea, that would be me. Like, so you really, it read like you would be friends, and it felt like you could fit into the space in a way that was authentic, and you rooted for every single person in the book,
Yes.
even the kid who at the beginning was like, oh, she gonna be tough, but like,
Yeah, I have to say, the one thing that drove me crazy consistently throughout the book was the child. And you know what? It's not that I don't believe. It's hard to say, like, I didn't like the way she responded to things because she's going through grief. And
hmm
that makes us do and act and say different things than we normally would. I think it was just kind of like this, it kept being like this constant flip-flop of, like, no, I hate her, she's got to go. And then it was like, oh, she's okay now, I like her. And then at the very mention of, like, Maya taking this job in New York, she's abandoning us, isn't she? I hate her. Everyone leaves us. And then he would just have to, like, continuously talk the daughter down off this ledge. And then she would go off again like 5 minutes later. I just was like, okay, I get that she's like a preteen, like, but it was a lot. It was a lot for me. Like, mm-mm.
yeah, she was challenging, but I did think, I wonder, she also, and again, we talk about like the idea of like, this is a big love story. Like,
Hmm.
she also had to be amenable to the idea of falling in love with this woman as
Right.
well. And hers manifested maybe a little differently than the adults in the book.
Hmm.
Where, like you said, you have this like flip flop, but she, in her mind, is probably, and this is like conjecture, is like, okay, if I like start to like this woman and we get close, she's just going to leave. Like
Right.
the end. And I like her. She seems really cool. And look at all this cool stuff she can do. But she's probably going to leave anyway.
You know what's weird
And
though is like when he does tell his daughter that Maya has sickle cell anemia, that's like one of the times she's like the coolest. Like she's like, "Oh, okay, but she's here now, right?" I'm like, "Okay, so wait, you can be like super
that's
neurotic
so
and go
true.
off the rails at the drop of a hat, but when we mention the fact that this woman has a life-altering disease and that she is slowly going to be dying for whatever time she has left here on
Yeah.
this earth, that's okay?"
Now that you mentioned it, I forgot about that. Yeah, she was like, "It's fine. We all have to." I think that's when I'd have pulled back. Like, are we sure? Like, Dad, let's think this through.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be, it's so funny because like I thought that was going to be a much bigger deal than it was. Like I think it was painted to be a much, like we were expected that that was going to be a huge deal. Like, oh,
Yeah,
he's going to reconsider them being in a relationship because he doesn't want to suffer another loss. He doesn't want to put his daughter through another loss.
right.
And that ended up not really being a problem. Like on the one hand,
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that because I like when my expectations are like defied and
Right.
we're, thinking outside the box. But then like they don't really have like a third act kind of breakup moment or the misunderstanding, which personally I'm fine with because I'm just so over that. The only thing is that she goes back to New
She
York
goes to New York
and
and they
there's
don't talk for,
yeah,
was it 7 days
and
or?
that's on her. That's on her for literally just like, I just didn't answer his calls. I just didn't talk to him. I'm like, what's
I
going
didn't want to
on?
call him. I didn't
What's
want him to
going
know.
You can't just
Like,
call him and say like I landed safely in New York. Like they literally don't talk at all.
yeah, like, was it for, I feel like it was for like 6 or 7 days that they
Yeah.
didn't.
It was over a week because when she goes
Yeah,
back to South Carolina, they're like, it's been over a week. I guess
right.
my one note is that there were sometimes the way they responded to situations or like what they said, the dialogue itself didn't feel the most natural to me. Like, but again, it's not me. I realize different people respond differently in certain situations, but it's like you said, when she takes the job and goes back, she's gone on for several pages about basically telling herself like, this is a great opportunity for me to stay in South Carolina and be with family
Yeah.
and be with the guy I like, and I have this new opportunity. And then after that whole monologue of her own, her response is, yeah, I'm gonna take the job. And I'm like, wait a second.
That's what shocked me. And again, I was like, maybe this is a convention of romance novels. Like, I don't know. But I was, again, like, it's the same thing I said. It's like when that woman, if I were Maya, made the choice to say, you know what, you're going to work and I'm not going to pay you. That's when I would have been
Right.
like, yeah, no.
We
so
done.
I think we're done. This is not a volunteer opportunity. So I think like, in that way, that was the piece for me when she went back to New York. It's like you are throwing away the love of your whole entire life
Right.
for Laura Whitcomb.
And she just always had to keep talking herself into it. Like,
yeah,
oh, here's all these wonderful things about my life in South Carolina. Here's all these terrible things about my life in New York. P.S. She paid $3,000 in rent for her apartment. I was just like, get the fuck out of here. Like,
no way.
and so, I'm just like, I don't see, you're not giving yourself any positives for your life in New York other than the fact that this is a dream your mom wanted for you. And
Yeah.
I understand that that's important, but does that outweigh literally all the negatives that you're listing off?
Your
And
actual health, your
yes.
actual health is at stake at this place.
Yeah.
And it was that I wanted her to sooner in the book to come to realize.
Yes.
Like, she was worth way more than Laura Whitcomb. And for her, that might have, like you said, it's equivalent to like Vera Wang. And maybe that is the top of your game. And she's like worked really hard to get to that point. But at what cost? Like, this woman didn't even want her to go and be with her family. Her dad, who had broken his hip. So I think I wanted her to get to that point sooner.
Yeah.
And realize that the opportunity wasn't even actually for her. Laura Whitcomb was riding her coattails.
She was never going to give her a job anyway.
No.
Like, she was never going to promote her to head designer without this burst of publicity that she's
Yeah.
gotten while designing in South Carolina. Like, it was never gonna happen. And so I'm with you in that. I feel like she did have these moments along the way in South Carolina where she'd be like, this is what's been missing from my life, or
Mhm.
wow, this isn't how we do it in New York, kind of thing. And I'm just like, I don't understand why you're not putting the pieces together. Like, this is so frustrating. And every time it would sound like she'd finally gotten it, like it had finally clicked, like, this is where I'm meant to be. Then she would go back to like thinking about going to New York. And I'm just like, what's going on? Like, so I guess there were just some things that weren't clicking for me in terms of
That
like the motivations, but
that's what we needed. I think you hit it on the head. And again, I really enjoyed this book. I really, really enjoyed
oh,
this
I
book.
did too.
But I almost feel like there aren't many books where I'm like, oh, we needed a few more pages. I wanted to know more about the mechanics of this Laura Whitcomb operation because, like, what? Like,
She tried
what?
to take her designs and mass
Yes.
produce them. Like,
They were,
this, mm-mm.
and all of Laura's stuff was this was stuff for the masses. Like, and she had this wonderful opportunity where in Charleston to be one of a kind, like truly be one of a kind and
Yep.
truly leave her mark on the design, like wedding design industry or fashion industry. And she wanted to give that away for Laura Whitcomb, who didn't pay her while she was away.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think again, it was like, it was meant to be both about the mom's wishes and the idea of
right.
time, like time being your enemy, that like, we don't have enough time. It's going to take a lot more time for me to establish
Mhm.
myself. I think at one point she says like, it would be, you know, I would rise to the top a lot quicker, like under this woman's brand than on my own,
On
kind
her,
of thing.
yeah.
But then it's like, okay, well, what do you want your legacy to be? Like, do you want it to
Mhm.
be you and your brand and your creations? Or do you want it to be that you were part of this much bigger thing that nobody's really going to know you? They're going to
You.
know that you were part of the Laura Whitcomb brand.
Whitcomb.
God, it
Like,
just sounds like a bitch name. Like, I mean, let's be honest.
so bad. Like, yeah, like, and I thought about that too. Like, I mean, I'm sure everybody's had like challenging jobs, but like, why are you doing it? Like, what is your
For
motivation?
real.
Like, why? Why
If
do
you are
you?
like physically ill and unhappy, like I just can't abide by. I've lived with roommates and I've had friends and I've gone on dates with people who have like complained about their jobs to me, and like my response is quit, then leave. Like, what if there is not the opportunity for change in this place, like, have you told them the problems you're having? You have. Okay,
Mhm.
great. Is nothing changing? Great. Leave. Like, you need to leave. And so this is,
Leave.
and I know it's easier to say than do, but I am just a firm believer that if you are not happy, this is something you are devoting so many hours to, so many days, so many
So
weeks,
much
so many
time.
years, like, it is not worth it to be unhappy, to be emotionally, physically, mentally unwell, because that is going to affect all the other parts of your life. This is just
Right.
one thing. So that's my own little soapbox to speak on when it comes to that. However, I will step down off the soapbox at
No,
this point.
I totally get it. And I really thought about that. This is impacting her health. And that's what I kept, I
Yeah.
was way, way too invested. I'm like, girl, this woman is not paying you. You're worth so much more than this. But
Laura
I think that was
Whitcomb.
Whitcomb. That was part of Maya's journey, though, is to realize she was worth it and she was worth more. And
Yes,
that she
ma'am.
deserved a lot of the things that she had denied herself.
Yep.
Because as great as Laura Whitcomb looked, she was denying herself the option to be wonderful on her
Hmm.
own. And I think a lot of it was fear. Like her mom wanted
Oh, for
that for
sure.
her. She's fighting to get to the top, but it's
Yeah.
also, I'm sure at some level, comfortable. Like she's just working in a big house, it's a big name. So she had to kind of go on this journey. Although, again, I wish we would have realized that when Laura was like, but I'm not going to pay you and you're going to
Hmm.
work.
Hmm.
But then the novel would have been over by that point
Right. We're over
because
at page like 70.
yeah, like it's done. And I would have been okay with that at the sake of Maya's sanity. Like I just was
Yeah.
that piece bothered me. It's like, girl, why? Like
Yeah.
go be great in Charleston and
go be great.
give Laura Whitcomb the finger, like,
Yes,
goodbye.
all the fingers.
Yes.
Seriously. Now, I have two other complaints, and they're minor because they're not really based off of what's in the book. They're based off of what I feel like is missing from the book. So,
Oh.
number one is sexual content because there is zero. So, just to make that clear, I probably should have said this up at the top, is that this is not a sexy book by any means. There is no
Mm-mm.
sex on the page. There is no
None.
discussion of sex off the page. We get
No.
a couple of kisses,
Kisses.
and they're not even hot. They are not sexy. There is no
No.
this is dry as a bone when it comes to the sexual content. So keep
This
that
is
in
what I
mind.
should have been reading in middle school. This is
Yes!
the scene I should have had in middle school.
Well, you know what's funny is in the end of the book when Preslaysa does her like author's notes, she says something like, I can't wait for my kids to read this. And I was like, I could see you writing this for your kids now. Like I can see them picking this up. And you know,
Everything's
again,
fine.
it's not a kid's book. There are plenty of romances out there that don't have sex in them, and that is fine. And you know what? As I was reading this, I wasn't angry about it. Like do I wish there was sex in it? Absolutely. I wish there was sex in every book pretty much. But
Pretty much.
I can't say all books because like Winnie the Pooh just wouldn't be appropriate. But with this one, it felt fine for like the relationship trajectory. Like I feel like it would have been nice to see them like a little more of their romance and like how
Yeah.
it's progressing, because that was my other complaint, is that time passes in a different way in this book. Like there would be moments where they're like, we're going to this wedding together as our date in 3 weeks. And then the
Right.
next paragraph would begin on the day of the wedding.
Their wedding.
And I'm just like, whoa, okay. And he talks about like going to see a pastor at the church and how he's been talking to a pastor the last few weeks. We never see any of that. There's just a lot of things that happen off the page, including their sex lives, that we never get to experience. And again, what we do experience is wonderful. I really do enjoy this story.
Yeah.
I would recommend this book absolutely, but just know that there are some things missing.
I did catch myself going back a couple times to figure out how much time had passed. Like, did I like skip over something or whatnot? So I did think about that. The other thing, to your point, I was like, are they gonna do it? Like, and then it's like he took her to this garden. Like, is he gonna take her back to his place? Are they gonna like
fuck her in the
fancy?
garden? Come on,
Give me some morsel. And there was nothing, like nothing. So I was like, well, it was as you said, very sweet. It was a very polite book. It is
polite. You're right. This is like the kiss on the hand of romance. Like it does not
opens the door for you. It ushers you into the car. Like
we do not. It doesn't get saucy. It doesn't take any liberties. There's not even like a heavy breath on the neck. Like we are keeping our distance.
Wait, no, I think she did gasp. I feel like she gasped in the garden.
Oh, because he like walked up next to her and like he even says, he's like, can I pull you closer? And I'm like, okay, here we go. And like that's literally the extent of that scene, is like he pulls her closer and puts his arm around her and she gasps because they're touching.
So that's as saucy as this. I was like, wait, there was a gasp. It is the gentle woman or gentleman of the romance novel. Like it pays for your dinner. It makes all the complimentary offers that we'd hope someone would extend to us.
It asks before it can kiss you.
Yeah,
like I mean, it's very, very much, very thoughtful, very, very polite, like you said. Yeah. So just know that going in. Like, but again, I didn't feel like, yes, I wanted it, but I don't even really know where it would have gone. Like, I don't know where I would have put that scene, you know? Like, if they were to hook up or something, I don't know where it would have gone. Like, it could have gone after one of their dates, but, you know,
Yeah.
he's also a parent and he's getting over the loss of his wife. Like, I'm not surprised that it wasn't there. I think, and I could be wrong, but I feel like maybe people who are, you know, suffering or living through like some sort of illness or disability, that maybe this does slow some things down when it comes to starting a new relationship with somebody, like having to disclose certain things about yourself that aren't something that everybody has to talk about, you know? And so
Right.
I could see there being like a little more hesitation. Again, I'm speaking out of my ass on this one, like because I just don't have that personal experience, but that would be my hypothesis, if you
Yeah, I
will.
think, and I appreciated the pacing of it. I did want them to get a little frisky, but that's also because I just
Mm-hmm.
really liked these two characters, and they did have kind of they had a good chemistry, they had a good friendship, and when they finally made the decision to date each
Yeah.
other, there was that anticipation for it, like the expectation for it.
Right.
I don't think I didn't miss it. Would it have been nice?
Yes.
Yes, I would have loved to get the description of like the gasp or like his hand on her back or
If you want a
whatever.
gasp, you need to earn that gasp.
Earn the
You don't
gasp.
get somebody to touch your lower back and get a gasp. Like that is not gasp worthy
Yes.
behavior.
I was like, she did gasp. But yeah, you're right. It was because he like touched her back or gave her his coat or something. So I guess like,
Ooh, he gave her his
oh,
coat. Is that what the kids are calling it?
oh. So I think like even a little would have been nice. It was
Yeah.
I think it was a very, like I said, a very polite read.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and so at this point then I'd love to discuss our ratings for this book, and clearly we probably will not be scoring for heat in this specific case. This will be a not applicable heat rating. Um
NA.
yeah, because, and you know what? We have definitely scored books for their heat even if there isn't like a blatant sex scene, but we've got nothing. We've got nothing to go off of in this book. And again, perfectly fine, but keep it in mind when you pick it up. So we will be scoring for heart and I guess humor. I'm not sure about this one because we normally score for heart, humor, and heat. And I feel like you could give heart all of the points and then just nothing to anything else.
I'm trying to think. You said humor, and I'm like, I didn't laugh much.
No, and that's the thing is we also read plenty of books for the podcast that are angstier reads or more dramatic reads, and so there
Mhm.
isn't necessarily a lot of humor, but usually there's 2 out of the 3. And with this one, you've heard us mention how much love is put into the relationships between, you know, not only the 2 main characters but the families and
Mhm.
the store and the town of Charleston. And so on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that it could possibly be. I mean, I feel like I should just take all the points from humor and
Yeah,
heat and put them into heart, and it's like 30 out of 10.
like, yeah, I think it does an excellent job of heart. Like,
Yeah.
just you do feel the love come off the page, and you can tell that Preslaysa put so much of her own heart. Like it's very tangible
Yeah.
in the read, and again, it's not often that you read books that have a theme like that aren't very like heavy about bereavement, but
Yeah.
also the love that came as a result of that bereavement. So Derek putting all of his love into his daughter in that
Mhm.
shop because it's what she needs. The dad putting all of his love into Maya, and Ginger putting her love into the shop and into the daughter and
Yeah.
into Maya's dad. And then Maya trying to figure out how to love herself, how to love her heritage and culture and where she
It's
came
a
from.
whole fest.
Yeah,
It's so many intersecting Venn diagrams.
right.
Like
It
it's like
is.
all the circles connecting.
Yes, I don't know that. Yeah, it gets, I think the bulk of the points, maybe it could be like humor or heart and politeness, like just being kind. Like it was a very
heart
kind
and wedding dress design.
wedding dress design.
Because
Yeah.
that's literally what this book is. It is not funny, but it's not meant to be funny. It is not
No.
sexy, nor were there moments that it was meant to be sexy, unless we're going off of a gasp when he ditches her back. And that one time at the botanical gardens.
Yes.
But it is all about the heart. Like this is a heart-heavy book. And I think that's something that a lot of us need, like every once in a while. It's not typically what I like to read in romance. And it was something that I was like, oh, this made me feel really good while reading this. Like I feel great. I feel like my day wasn't just ruined by fictional characters, which does happen sometimes where you're just like, that's it, I'm going back to bed. And this was not that book. Like, so if you want a feel good read, you know, to experience love and family and support and, you know, come out of it feeling good, I think this is a great read for that. And then there's also the fashion. So, you know, all those Project Runway lovers out there, like, get ready.
Right? I think we need an online petition for a sketchbook so
I
that
agree.
it can be included with this novel.
I agree. I want to know too. I want to know like if these are based off of like specific designs that like Preslaysa has seen, or like a specific designer, because I want these dresses to be real.
Right? That was my biggest gripe, is like, did they include sketches? Like, I know this is not a picture book, but it was so rich. And
we need a coloring book. There can be like the accompanying color book.
Yes, the adult coloring book where you zen out. The audio version, you can color to it. I love it.
My gosh. Okay, pay us.
You're welcome, Miss Williams. You're welcome.
Here's our ideas. Give us money. Here we go.
You're welcome.
Oh my gosh. Well, Marchae, my dear, thank you so much for doing this with me. And I have to say, you know, I hope this has restored some hope and less skepticism when it comes to the genre of romance.
Yes, this was a good one to get back in the saddle with. When we spoke separately, I even said, I love this book. It's so good.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with the characters. So it has indeed given me hope. And I will be expecting her next book. So
okay. Pressure's on.
I know.
Yeah, we just have to find you something to read that's not just like murder and mayhem before then. Because I don't want you to fall off of the romance train and back into, you know, destruction of family dynamics.
Which is what I read immediately after.
You've heard of the palate cleanser. This is like the palate clutterer. Like, I cleansed my palate. Now I have to like dirty it up again with all this madness.
I did. I was like, well, that one looks good.
Well,
so yes,
we will find you more. And, you know, anybody listening, you can always find more recommendations and book talk and everything on our social medias, as well as on boobiesandnoobies.com. Thank you so much for listening and keep reading. So that means you too, Marchae.
Yes. Thanks, Callie.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. Boobies and Newbies is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. You can follow Boobies and Newbies on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Boobies Podcast.